He grabbed the black waitress by the arm. Then a mafia boss said just one word. The chandelier over table 9 scatters diamonds across linen. Jasmine Carter moves through La Stella Rosa like a ghost, present, unseen, until she isn't. A man drowns in his own expensive wine and ego. Jasmine keeps her voice even. "Sir, please lower your voice. You're disturbing the other guests." His smile cuts. "Do you know who I am?" The chair scrapes. Conversations die mid-sentence. "You don't get paid to think. You get paid to smile, bring my food, and disappear." Heat floods her face, but she holds the line. She sees her mother's pills, her brother's tuition, the rent due next week. She can't afford a scene, yet she can't afford to vanish. "Sir, let me get the manager." His hand is a vice on her forearm. The water pitcher slips, shatters. Ice skitters across marble. 100 witnesses freeze. Not one moves. Pain blooms. Her throat tightens. She opens her mouth to apologize, to scream, and the room temperature drops 10 degrees. A presence doesn't walk up. It arrives. A voice, quiet enough to be polite, heavy enough to promise consequences. "Release." The grip falls away as if her skin burned him. She turns. Black suit. Marble-cut jaw. Eyes like a verdict. Dante Salvatore, owner of La Stella Rosa, the name that makes powerful men swallow their pride. "You put your hands on my employee," he says, almost gentle. "In my restaurant. Explain." The man stammers. Apologizes. Dante doesn't blink. "Marco, escort Mr. Patterson to his car. He's done here. Everywhere." The room exhales. Dante's gaze finds Jasmine. "You're injured." He kneels, actually kneels, and his touch is careful where the bruises are already blooming. A card. A promise. "If anything like this happens again, you call me directly." Jasmine steps into the November night with a bruise, a business card, and the eerie certainty that a single word just rerouted her life. What happens when the girl who refuses to shrink meets the man everyone else fears? Keep watching. This is where everything changes. The crystal chandelier above table 9 caught the light just right, scattering diamonds across white linen. Jasmine Carter had learned to move through spaces like this. La Stella Rosa, Manhattan's most exclusive Italian restaurant. Like a ghost. Present but unseen. Efficient but invisible. Until the moment she became impossible to ignore. "Excuse me, sir." Her voice was professional, measured. "I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice. You're disturbing the other guests." The man at table 9 was red-faced, drunk on expensive wine and his own importance. His 3 companions had gone quiet, exchanging nervous glances. They knew what Jasmine was just beginning to understand. She'd made a terrible mistake. "What did you just say to me?" His voice dropped to something dangerous. Jasmine's hand trembled slightly as she held the water pitcher. 26 years old, 3 years working at La Stella Rosa, and she'd never directly confronted a guest. But this man had been getting progressively louder, his language increasingly vulgar, describing his latest business conquest in terms that made the elderly couple 2 tables over, visibly uncomfortable. "Sir, do you know who I am?" He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against marble. "Do you have any idea how much money I spend in this establishment?" The restaurant went quiet. Conversations died mid-sentence. Silverware paused halfway to mouths. Every eye in the room turned toward them. "Sir, I apologize if I've offended you. I just thought—" "You thought?" He stepped closer, and Jasmine caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with alcohol and rage. "You don't get paid to think, sweetheart. You get paid to smile and bring me my food and disappear." Heat flooded Jasmine's face. She'd experienced casual racism before. The assumptions, the microaggressions, The customers who seemed surprised a black woman could correctly pronounce Italian wine names. But this was different. This was designed to humiliate. "I understand, sir. I'll have the manager." "Oh, you'll get the manager?" His laugh was cruel. "And what's he going to do? Fire you for being insolent? Please, go ahead. Do me the favor." Jasmine's throat tightened. She needed this job, needed it desperately. Her mother's medical bills, her younger brother's college tuition, the rent on their apartment in Queens, all of it balanced precariously on her shoulders. She couldn't afford to lose this income, but she also couldn't afford to let this man continue. "Sir, regardless of how much you spend here, you don't have the right to make other guests uncomfortable. If you could just—" His hand shot out faster than she could react, fingers closing around her forearm like a vice. The water pitcher slipped from her other hand, shattering against the floor in an explosion of glass and ice. "Let me explain something to you." He pulled her closer, his grip bruising. "People like you exist to serve people like me. You want to keep your job? You'll shut your mouth, clean up this mess, and bring me another bottle of the Brunello. And maybe, I won't have you fired tonight." Pain radiated up Jasmine's arm. She could feel every finger digging into her flesh, knew there would be marks tomorrow. The restaurant remained frozen, dozens of witnesses to her humiliation, and not one person moved to help. She opened her mouth, to apologize, to scream, she wasn't sure, when the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. A presence materialized behind her. Not walked over, not approached. Simply appeared, as if he'd been standing there all along, waiting for precisely this moment. Release. One word, spoken quietly, almost conversationally, but it carried the weight of absolute authority, of promised violence, of power so complete it didn't need to be raised. The man's hand fell away from her arm as if she'd suddenly caught fire. Jasmine stumbled backward, cradling her injured arm, and turned to see who had spoken. The man was tall, easily 6'3", and wore a black suit so perfectly tailored it looked painted on. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, lips pressed into a line that suggested he smiled rarely and meant it even less. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. Dark, intense, and currently fixed on the man who'd grabbed her with an expression that promised swift and terrible consequences. Every person in the restaurant seemed to lean away from him instinctively, as if proximity to this man carried its own dangers. "Mr. Salvatore." The drunk man's bravado evaporated instantly. "I didn't realize, I wasn't aware that you put your hands on her." Each word was precisely articulated, almost gentle. Somehow that made it more terrifying. "In my restaurant. Explain." His restaurant? Jasmine's mind reeled. This was Dante Salvatore. The Dante Salvatore. She'd worked here for 3 years and had never actually seen the owner, only heard whispered stories. The man who'd built an empire from nothing. The man whose name made grown men nervous. The man rumored to have connections that extended far beyond legitimate business. "She was disrespectful," the drunk man stammered, all his earlier aggression gone. She needed to learn her place." "Her place?" Dante Salvatore took one step closer. Just one. The drunk man actually whimpered. "And you decided you had the authority to put your hands on my employee to teach her this lesson? I'll leave. Right now. I apologize." "You'll leave when I tell you to leave." Another step. "First, you'll apologize to her. Properly." The man turned to Jasmine, his face a mask of humiliation and fear. "I sincerely apologize, miss. I was out of line. It won't happen again." Jasmine managed to nod, not trusting her voice. Dante studied the man for a long moment. Then he turned to someone Jasmine hadn't noticed before. a large man in a dark suit standing near the kitchen entrance. "Marco, escort Mr. Patterson to his car. Make sure he understands he's no longer welcome in any of my establishments. Ever." "Yes, boss." As Marco moved forward, Dante's attention shifted to the man's companions, still frozen at table 9. "Your bill is covered. Please enjoy the rest of your evening, somewhere else." They scrambled to leave, practically running for the exit. The restaurant remained silent. Then, slowly, conversations resumed. Silverware clinked. The normal sounds of an expensive dinner returned, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But everything had changed. Dante Salvatore finally looked at Jasmine directly, and she felt the full force of his attention like a physical thing. His expression softened, barely perceptible, but real. "You're injured." It wasn't a question. She glanced down at her arm. Dark bruises were already forming in the shape of fingers. "It's nothing. I should clean up the glass. Someone else will handle it." He gestured, and immediately 2 staff members appeared with a broom and dustpan. "Come with me." It wasn't a request. Jasmine's heart hammered as she followed him through the restaurant, acutely aware of every eye tracking their movement. He led her through the kitchen, where the entire staff went silent at his appearance, and into a private office she'd never known existed. The office was elegant but minimalist. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. A single photograph on the desk showed a young woman with Dante's same dark eyes, laughing at something off camera. "Sit." He indicated one of the leather chairs while he moved to a cabinet, returning with a first aid kit that looked surprisingly well stocked. "Mr. Salvatore, really, I'm fine. Call me Dante." He knelt in front of her, actually knelt, and gently took her injured arm in his hands. His touch was careful, clinical. "And you're not fine." He left marks. Up close, Jasmine could see details she'd missed before. A small scar above his left eyebrow, silver threading through the dark hair at his temples. Fine lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled more than his reputation implied, just not in public. He applied antiseptic to the bruises with practiced efficiency. "How long have you worked here?" 3 years. "And in 3 years, has anything like this happened before?" "Not exactly like this, no." His eyes lifted to hers, sharp and assessing. "But you've dealt with difficult customers." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "It comes with the job." "It shouldn't." He finished wrapping her arm with unnecessary care, his fingers lingering a moment longer than strictly necessary. "What's your name?" "Jasmine Carter." "Jasmine." He said it slowly as if testing how it felt. "Italian for gelsomino, the flower that blooms at night, filling the darkness with fragrance." He stood, offering his hand to help her up. "Fitting, I think." She took his hand, feeling calluses she wouldn't have expected on someone so obviously wealthy. "You know the meaning of names?" "I know a lot of things." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, including that you were right to confront Patterson. He was being deliberately offensive, and you were the only one brave enough to say something. Or stupid enough. There's a thin line between bravery and stupidity. Sometimes you only know which it was after the fact. He moved to his desk, retrieving a business card. "Take tomorrow off. Paid. You've had enough excitement for one evening." "Sir, I can't afford—" "It's not a suggestion." He handed her the card. His personal card, she realized, with a phone number handwritten on the back. "And if anything like this happens again, anything at all, you call me directly." "Understood?" Jasmine stared at the card, her mind racing. "Why are you doing this?" "Because no one who works for me should be assaulted and then worry about losing their job." His expression hardened. And because men like Patterson need to learn that money doesn't buy them the right to hurt people. He walked her to the door, then paused. Jasmine, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you back down? You knew he could have you fired. You knew you needed this job. But you stood your ground anyway. Why? She thought about her mother, about her brother, about all the times she'd bitten her tongue and swallowed her pride, about how some insults you could absorb and some you couldn't. Because if I let men like him make me small, eventually I'll disappear completely. Something changed in his expression. Respect, recognition, maybe even admiration. You're going to be fine, Jasmine Carter. Better than fine. He opened the door for her. I'll see you the day after tomorrow. Same shift. As she left, she felt his eyes on her back, all the way through the kitchen, through the dining room, out into the cold November night. Jasmine stood on the sidewalk, looking at the business card in her hand, and knew with absolute certainty that her life had just changed irrevocably. She had no idea how right she was. Jasmine's apartment in Queens felt even smaller than usual when she returned that night. The one bedroom she shared with her 15-year-old brother Marcus looked tired. Paint peeling, radiator clanking, the persistent smell of the Indian restaurant downstairs. But it was home. And it was hers. Marcus was sprawled on the couch, laptop balanced on his knees, headphones on. He looked up when she entered and immediately frowned. Jazz, what happened to your arm? She glanced down at the bandage. Nothing. Long night at work. That's not nothing. He closed his laptop, giving her his full attention. At 15, Marcus was already taller than she was, with their father's height and their mother's sharp intelligence. Did someone hurt you? It's handled. She dropped onto the couch beside him, suddenly exhausted. How was school? Don't change the subject. I'm not changing the subject. I'm asking about your day. My day was boring. Your arm has finger-shaped bruises. So, I'm going to ask again. What happened? Jasmine sighed. There was no point in lying to Marcus. He'd been 8 when their father died, 13 when their mother's diagnosis came through. He'd grown up fast, learned to read her moods, to know when she was hiding something. A customer grabbed me. My boss intervened. It's over. Marcus's expression darkened. Did you report him? File charges? Mark, it's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. He assaulted you. Her brother stood, pacing the small living room with agitated energy. You should press charges, sue him, something. And lose my job? Risk getting blacklisted from every decent restaurant in Manhattan? She shook her head. I can't afford to make waves. You know that. So what? You just take it? Let rich assholes treat you like property? I stood up to him. Jasmine's voice was sharp. I confronted him in front of the entire restaurant. I did what I could without getting fired. That's all I can do. Marcus stopped pacing, his anger deflating into something worse. She looked like she wanted to protest, but exhaustion was pulling at her features. Just be there for Rena. That's payment enough. Kazuki left the hospital with his mind churning. Takeshi fell into step beside him as they headed to the waiting cars. Orders, Oyabun? Find every Nakamura soldier involved in today's attack. I want names, locations, and families. Kazuki's voice was arctic. Then find Nakamura himself. We're having a conversation about boundaries and consequences. And the teacher? 24-hour protection. Discreet. She doesn't need to know the details. Kazuki paused. And find out everything about her. Where she lives, her financial situation, any family. Takeshi nodded, then asked carefully, What are you planning? Kazuki didn't answer. He wasn't entirely sure himself. But that woman had thrown herself in front of a bullet for Rena, had challenged him to be better, had looked at him without fear or judgment. She'd called him out on his failures and somehow made him want to fix them. In his world, that kind of courage, that kind of heart, was rarer than gold, and infinitely more precious. The investigation took 12 hours. By morning, Kazuki knew everything. Aiko Mizuki, 27, orphaned at 19, teaching for 6 years. She lived alone in a tiny apartment, survived on a teacher's salary that barely qualified as living, and spent her own money on classroom supplies and struggling students. No family, few friends, a life devoted entirely to children who weren't hers. The Nakamura situation resolved itself with brutal efficiency. Kazuki visited the rival Oyabun personally, and their conversation ended with clear understanding. Children were completely off limits, and any further moves against the Kurosawa family would result in absolute annihilation. The men who'd carried out the shooting disappeared into Tokyo Bay. Their vehicle was found in pieces in a scrapyard. 3 days later, Kazuki returned to the hospital. Aiko was being discharged, arguing with a nurse about the bill. "There must be a mistake. I can't possibly afford—" "It's covered," Kazuki said from the doorway. Both women turned. The nurse recognized him immediately and found urgent business elsewhere. Aiko's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Kurosawa, I told you that wasn't necessary. And I told you I pay my debts." He stepped into the room. "You're being released today?" "Yes, thankfully. I need to get back to school. My students need their teacher healthy and recovered," Kazuki interrupted. "You were shot 4 days ago, Mizuki-sensei." "I'm fine. The bullet went through cleanly." She stood, a bit unsteadily, and Kazuki fought the urge to reach out and steady her. "I can't afford to take more time off." There it was, the financial reality that shaped her entire life. Kazuki made another decision, this one feeling strangely inevitable. How would you feel about private tutoring work? Additional income, flexible hours? Aiko looked suspicious. Doing what, exactly? Teaching Rina, at home. She's traumatized by what happened. My mother thinks returning to school too quickly might be damaging. Not entirely a lie. His mother had suggested this, though Kazuki had his own reasons. 2 hours every evening, 5 days a week. Name your price. He watched her calculate. Pride versus need. Independence versus practicality. Her apartment probably cost most of her salary. She'd been wearing the same clothes in rotation each time he'd visited. The hospital had noted she'd declined pain medication she'd have to pay for herself. "Double my hourly teaching rate," she finally said. "And only if Rina's comfortable with it." "Done." He pulled out a card. "My driver will collect you at 6 this evening. We'll discuss details then." "I haven't agreed." "You will." Kazuki met her eyes. "Because Rina needs this, and you care about her too much to let pride get in the way." Aiko's expression flickered between annoyance and resignation. "You're very direct." "I find it saves time." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Thank you, Mizuki-sensei, for everything." He left before she could respond, already planning the next steps. Protecting Aiko Mizuki was the right thing to do. The honorable thing. She'd saved Rina's life. She deserved security and safety in return. That the thought of seeing her regularly made something warm unfurl in his chest was completely irrelevant. Act 3. Breaking Walls. The Kurosawa estate existed in a different world than Aiko's tiny apartment. Traditional Japanese architecture blended seamlessly with modern security. A fortress disguised as a home. The driver who collected Aiko was polite and silent, and she spent the entire ride wondering what she'd agreed to. Kazuki met her at the entrance, and Aiko's breath caught slightly. She'd seen him in a hospital room, all sharp suits and controlled intensity. Here, in his own space with the late sunlight gilding the garden behind him, he looked different. Still dangerous, she wasn't naive, but also oddly at home, like a blade returned to its sheath. Mizuki-sensei, thank you for coming. Where's Rina? A hint of amusement touched his eyes. Direct. I like that. He gestured toward the house. She's in the study. Fair warning, she's been nervous all day. They walked through corridors that smelled of tatami and expensive wood. Traditional art hung on walls, but Aiko noticed the cameras, the subtle security measures everywhere. This is his world, she reminded herself. This is what he is. Rina was indeed in the study, surrounded by books and looking small in a large chair. Her face lit up when she saw Aiko. Sensei! She scrambled down and ran over, then stopped short, suddenly shy. Does your shoulder hurt? I'm sorry, Come here, Aiko said gently, kneeling carefully to the girl's level. I'm okay, see? Just a bandage, nothing to worry about. Rina hugged her carefully, as if afraid she might break. Aiko held the child close, her heart aching. This little girl had witnessed something terrible, and the trauma lingered in her careful movements and worried eyes. Are you really going to be my tutor? Rina asked. If you'd like me to be. I would. Rina glanced at Kazuki. Uncle Kazuki arranged it. He's been different since it happened. Different how? He visits every day now. He had dinner with grandmother and me last night. She lowered her voice. He asked about my favorite foods and what I like to read and if I was having nightmares. Aiko met Kazuki's eyes across the room. He looked uncomfortable with the attention, but there was something else there. A tentative hope, maybe, that he was doing things right. That sounds like a good kind of different, Aiko said softly. The tutoring sessions became routine. Aiko arrived at 6 each evening, worked with Rina for 2 hours, and accepted payment that made her modest life suddenly comfortable. She could buy groceries without calculating every yen. She could replace her worn shoes. She could breathe without the constant pressure of financial terror. But more than the money, she found herself drawn into the strange world of the Kurosawa family. Rina's grandmother, Kaide, was kind and sharp-witted, treating Aiko like an honored guest. Rina herself blossomed with attention, her trauma slowly healing with consistent care and security. And Kazuki was there almost every evening. He'd appear in the study's doorway, ostensibly checking on Rina, but his dark eyes would linger on Aiko. Sometimes he'd ask about her day, her students, her thoughts on books or art. He listened when she spoke, really listened, like her words mattered. You're good with her, he said one evening, after Rina had gone to bed and Aiko was gathering her materials. She's a special child, sensitive, intelligent, kind, despite everything she's been through. She takes after her mother. Kazuki's voice was quiet. My sister Ayame. She was the best of us. Aiko heard the grief beneath his words. What was she like? Everything I'm not. Warm, open, forgiving. He leaned against the doorframe. She used to tell me I'd frozen my heart to survive our father's world. Said someday I'd meet someone who'd thaw it. Do you think she was right? I thought it was romantic nonsense. His gaze held hers. I'm less certain now. The air between them felt charged, electric. Aiko's pulse quickened. This was dangerous territory, not just because of who he was, but because of how she was starting to feel. Mr. Kurosawa, Kazuki, please. Kazuki, she amended, the name feeling intimate on her tongue. I should go. My driver will take you home. I can take the train. It's late. I insist. He stepped closer. Aiko? May I call you Aiko? She nodded, unable to speak. You're safe here. You know that, don't you? No one will hurt you while you're under my protection. I know. And she did. This man who commanded an empire of violence somehow made her feel safer than she'd ever been. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it was intoxicating. The driver took her home, and Aiko spent the ride wondering what was happening to her carefully controlled life. 2 weeks into the arrangement, everything shifted. Aiko arrived to find the estate in controlled chaos. Men in dark suits everywhere. Voices raised in urgent Japanese. Kaide met her at the entrance, her face tight with worry. "I'm sorry, Aiko-san. There's been a situation. Perhaps it's best if you come another day. Is Rina okay?" "She's fine, but..." "Then I'll stay." Aiko's voice was firm. "She needs routine right now. Consistency." Kazuki appeared, his expression darker than she'd ever seen it. "Mizuki-sensei, this isn't a good time." Kaide-san explained. "I'm staying anyway." She met his glare steadily. "Unless you're ordering me to leave." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe respect. Stubborn. One of my best qualities. Despite the tension, his mouth quirked. "Fine. But stay in the study with Rina. Don't leave that room." "What's happening?" "Nothing for you to worry about." "If it affects Rina, it's something for me to worry about." Kazuki studied her for a long moment. Then, "The Nakamura clan is making noise again. Nothing will happen here. My security is absolute. But..." He hesitated. "Your apartment building. Someone was asking questions about you this afternoon. A man matching descriptions of Nakamura soldiers." Ice flooded Aiko's veins. "Why would they..." "Because they know you're connected to Rina. Because hurting you might hurt me now." His jaw tightened. "I'm handling it." "How?" "You don't want to know." He was probably right, but the reality was settling in. Her act of protection had dragged her into a dangerous world. She should have been terrified. Instead, looking at Kazuki's controlled fury, she felt protected. "Teach Rina," he said quietly. "Stay here tonight. I have guest rooms prepared. Tomorrow we'll discuss arrangements." "Arrangements?" "You can't go back to your apartment, not until this is resolved." Before she could protest, he added, "This isn't negotiable. You're in danger because of me, because of my family. I protect what's mine." "I'm not..." "You are." The words were fierce, absolute. "The moment you threw yourself in front of that bullet, you became mine to protect. Accept it." He left before she could argue, disappearing into the estate's depths with his soldiers. Aiko stood in the hallway, her heart pounding. "You became mine." The possessiveness should have been offensive. Instead, it made her feel claimed, cherished in a way she'd never experienced. She taught Rina as promised, though the girl sensed the tension and was quieter than usual. Afterward, Kaide showed Aiko to a guest room that was larger than her entire apartment. Traditional but luxurious, with a private bathroom and clothes already laid out. "Kazuki prepared this earlier," Kaide said. "He was hoping you'd agree to stay. She smiled gently. "He worries about you more than he'd admit." That night, Aiko lay in impossibly soft sheets and stared at the ceiling. Her life had been simple, predictable, safely contained. Now she was sleeping in a Yakuza boss's home, protected by criminals, feeling things for a man she barely knew but somehow understood deeply. The dangerous thing was how right it felt. Morning brought clarity and complications. Kazuki found her in the garden after breakfast, and his expression was grave. "The Nakamura situation has been addressed. They won't bother you again." "How did you..." She stopped. "Never mind. I don't want to know." "Smart." He stepped closer. "But you still can't go home." "Not yet. Your apartment isn't secure and I..." He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "I can't guarantee your safety there." "So what are you suggesting?" "Stay here. In the guest house. It's separate, private. Continue tutoring Rina. Let me ensure you're protected." "For how long?" "As long as necessary." His dark eyes searched hers. "Would that be so terrible?" The honest answer was no. The thought of staying here, seeing Rina daily, being near Kazuki, it wasn't terrible at all. Which terrified her. "Why do you care?" she asked quietly. "Really? I'm no one, Kazuki. Just a teacher who did what anyone decent would do." "That's where you're wrong." He stepped closer still, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Most people would have run. Most people would have saved themselves. You chose to be a shield for a child you'd known for 3 months. That kind of courage, that kind of heart." His hand lifted, almost touching her face before dropping. "That's not anyone, Aiko. That's rare. Precious." Her breath caught. "I'm not." "You are." His voice dropped lower. "And I'm selfish enough to want to keep you close, to make sure you're safe, to—" He hesitated. "To see you every day." "This is crazy," she whispered. "You're Yakuza." "I know." Pain flashed in his eyes. "I know what I am, what my world is. I know I have no right to ask this of you. But Ayame was right. My heart has been frozen for years. And somehow, you—" He shook his head. "You make me want to be better. Be more." Aiko's resolve crumbled. This powerful, dangerous man looked vulnerable for the first time since she'd met him. He was offering protection, yes, but also something deeper. Connection, care, the tentative hope of something neither of them could name yet. "The guest house," she said finally. "For now, but I'm not giving up my apartment or my job at the school." Relief flooded his features. "Fair enough. And Kazuki?" She met his eyes steadily. "I'm not afraid of what you are, but I need you to be honest with me. Always. Can you do that?" "Yes." No hesitation, no doubt. "I promise." The next weeks unfolded in unexpected peace. Aiko moved into the guest house, a small, perfect space with a garden view and more comfort than she'd ever known. She returned to teaching at Sakura Elementary, with discreet bodyguards following at a distance. She tutored Rina every evening, watching the girl's confidence grow and her nightmares fade. And she spent time with Kazuki. He'd appear after her sessions with Rina, and they'd walk in the garden or share tea or simply talk. He asked about her childhood, her dreams, her favorite books. She learned about his sister, his complicated relationship with his father, the burden of responsibility he carried. "I never wanted this life," he admitted one evening under cherry blossoms. "I wanted to be a teacher, actually. Study literature. Ayame used to tease me about my poetry." "You write poetry?" "Wrote, past tense. My father had different plans." His expression hardened. "In this world, you don't get to choose soft dreams." "Why not?" Aiko challenged. "You're the boss now. Who's stopping you?" "Reality. Responsibility. The hundreds of men who depend on me for their livelihoods, their families' safety." He looked at her. "I can't just walk away." "I'm not suggesting you do. But maybe—" She hesitated. "Maybe you can be both. The protector and the poet. The boss and the man who loves literature." "Is that what you see when you look at me?" His voice was soft, wondering. "Someone who could be both?" "I see someone trying very hard to be better than he believes he can be." She touched his hand carefully. "I see someone who loves his niece enough to change, who keeps his word, who looks at the world with eyes that have seen too much darkness but still choose honor." She smiled. "Yes, I think you can be both." Kazuki's fingers intertwined with hers. "You're extraordinary, Aiko Mizuki." "I'm really not. I'm ordinary. Painfully so." "Then your ordinary is my extraordinary." He lifted her hand to his lips, a gesture so old-fashioned and gentle that her heart stuttered. "Thank you. For seeing me. Thank you for letting me." The kiss, when it finally came 2 days later, felt inevitable. They were in the garden again, watching fireflies dance in the dusk. Aiko had been laughing at something, a story about Rina's latest obsession with dinosaurs. And when she looked up, Kazuki was watching her with such intensity that her breath caught. What? You're beautiful when you laugh. You should do it more often. I laugh plenty. Not like this. Not free and genuine and… He stepped closer. Aiko, tell me if I'm misreading this. Tell me if what I feel is one-sided. What do you feel? Her voice was barely a whisper. Everything. His hand cupped her face with infinite gentleness. I feel everything when I'm near you. You've undone years of carefully constructed walls. You make me want impossible things. A normal life, simple happiness, mornings that don't start with violence. His thumb brushed her cheek. You make me want to be the man you see when you look at me. Kazuki, I'm in love with you. The words were raw, honest, terrified. Completely, hopelessly. I know I have no right. I know my world is darkness and you're light, and I'll probably only hurt you. But I can't. I can't keep pretending I don't feel this. Aiko's eyes burned with sudden tears. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever looked at her like she was precious, vital, the answer to questions they'd been asking their whole lives. I'm in love with you too, she whispered back. It's terrifying and probably foolish and I don't care. His kiss was gentle, reverent, like she was something sacred he was afraid to break. Aiko melted into it, into him, into the impossibility of this connection between a Yakuza boss and a schoolteacher. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Kazuki rested his forehead against hers. I'll protect you, always, no matter what. I know, she smiled. But I'm pretty good at protecting people too, remember? How could I forget? You're the only person I know brave enough to take a bullet. His arms tightened around her. Which you're never doing again, understood? Can't promise that. If Rina's ever in danger again, I'll be the shield. His voice was fierce. You've done enough. Let me protect both of you now. The threat came 3 days later. Not from the Nakamura clan, but from elements within Kazuki's own organization who thought he'd grown soft, distracted. A faction led by a senior lieutenant named Saito, who believed the Kurosawa Kai needed stronger, more violent leadership. Aiko was at school when she got the call from Kaide, her voice tight with controlled panic. Aiko-san, don't come to the estate today. There's been… complications. Kazuki is handling it, but… Is Rina safe? Yes, she's with me at a secure location. But Kazuki… She hesitated. He's facing a challenge. From inside. And I'm worried. Aiko's blood turned to ice. She knew enough about Yakuza politics to understand what a challenge from inside meant. Violence. Potential coup. Men who'd stop at nothing to take power. She should have stayed at school. Should have trusted Kazuki to handle it. Should have been the sensible civilian who didn't interfere in criminal business. Instead, she told the principal she had an emergency and caught a taxi to the estate. The compound was eerily quiet when she arrived. Too quiet, with an undercurrent of tension that made her skin prickle. Security guards she didn't recognize stood at the gates. Through the windows, she could see men gathered in what looked like a meeting hall. A guard blocked her path. No visitors today. I'm Rina's tutor. Kazuki is expecting me. A lie, but spoken with confidence. The guard looked uncertain, then spoke into a radio. A moment later, Takeshi appeared, his face grim. Mizuki-san, you shouldn't be here. Where's Kazuki? Dealing with internal matters. It's not safe. Where? Something in her expression made him pause. Then, with a sigh, the meeting hall. But you can't. Aiko was already walking past him. Takeshi caught up, looking torn between stopping her and protecting her. They reached the meeting hall doors just as raised voices echoed from within. Weak, distracted by a woman. This is what happens when sentiment clouds judgment. Watch your tone, Saito. Kazuki's voice was arctic. Or what? You'll have me killed? You don't have the stomach for it anymore. Not since the school teacher wrapped you around her finger. Aiko didn't think. She pushed through the doors. The meeting hall fell silent. 30 men in dark suits stared at her. Some shocked, some angry, some calculating. Kazuki stood at the head of a long table, his face a mask of controlled fury. Across from him, a stocky man with cruel eyes, Saito, presumably, smirked. "Speak of the devil," Saito said. "The little teacher who's made our Oyabun forget his duties." "Get out," Kazuki said to Aiko, his voice tight. "Now." "No." She walked forward, every eye tracking her movement. "If they're complaining about me, I should be here." "This isn't your concern. It is if they're using me as an excuse to challenge you." She stopped beside Kazuki, facing the room. "I'm Aiko Mizuki. I teach 3rd grade at Sakura Elementary. I tutor Rina Kurosawa. And apparently, my existence is a problem." Saito laughed. "Bold. Stupid, but bold. Tell me, teacher, what do you know about leading men? About maintaining respect through strength? About the realities of our world?" "Nothing," Aiko admitted. "But I know Kazuki. I know he's honorable. I know he keeps his word and protects his people. I know he's strong enough to care about his niece, and smart enough to end a war with the Nakamura clan without massive bloodshed." She met Saito's eyes steadily. "What I don't know is why a man who questions his leader's strength does it with words instead of action. If you think you'd be better, challenge him properly. Otherwise, you're just a coward hiding behind complaints." The silence was absolute. Then someone laughed. A young lieutenant near the back. Others joined in. Saito's face flushed dark with rage. "You dare!" "She's right." The speaker was an older man with scars on his hands. "You've been stirring dissent for weeks, Saito. But you haven't formally challenged the Oyabun. You just whisper and complain. That's not strength. That's politics." "I agree," another voice added. "Kurosawa-san has led us well. The Nakamura situation was handled perfectly. No war, but clear boundaries. That took skill." One by one, men voiced support for Kazuki. The tide turned visibly, and Saito's face grew darker with each statement. Finally, Kazuki spoke, his voice calm but absolutely authoritative. "Saito, you have a choice. Accept my leadership and continue serving the Kurosawa Kai with loyalty, or leave this organization entirely. Those are your only options. And if I refuse both? Then we settle this the old way, but you know how that ends." Kazuki's gaze was flat, emotionless. "You're a decent lieutenant when you're not playing politics. I'd prefer not to lose you. But I won't tolerate division in my family. Choose now." Saito looked around the room, reading the lack of support. Whatever backing he'd thought he had was gone, undermined by Aiko's unexpected appearance and the room's shift in mood. "I accept your leadership, Oyabun." The words were bitter, but he bowed. "My loyalty is yours." "Then we're done here. Everyone out except Takeshi." The room cleared quickly. Aiko found herself suddenly alone with Kazuki and his second-in-command. Kazuki's careful control cracked. "What the hell were you thinking?" His hands gripped her shoulders. "Do you understand how dangerous that was? If Saito had..." "But he didn't." Aiko's hands covered his. "I couldn't stay away. Not when they were using me as a weapon against you. You should have trusted me to handle it. I do trust you, but that doesn't mean you have to face everything alone." She smiled slightly. "We protect each other, remember? That's how this works." Kazuki pulled her against his chest, his heart pounding against her ear. "You're going to make me gray before 40. You'll look distinguished. Despite everything, he laughed. Impossible, woman. You love me anyway. God help me, I do. He pulled back to look at her face. Aiko, I meant what I said. I'm going to protect you. Build a life with you if you'll have it. I know my world is complicated and dangerous, but I'm not afraid. She reached up to touch his face. I know who you are. All of it. And I choose this. Choose you. Choose us. You deserve better. I deserve what I want. And I want you. Her smile was soft, certain. Besides, Rina needs us both. We're her family now. Kazuki kissed her then, deep, claiming, full of promise and relief and love. When they finally broke apart, Takeshi was politely studying the ceiling. If you're finished, he said dryly, I should mention that Rina and Kaide-sama are waiting in the west wing. Rina was quite worried about both of you. They found Rina with Kaide, and the little girl launched herself at them both. Kazuki caught her easily, and she wrapped one arm around his neck and reached for Aiko with the other. You're okay. Grandmother said there was trouble, but you'd be fine. And... She looked between them, her eyes widening. Uncle Kazuki, you're holding Aiko-sensei's hand. I am, Kazuki confirmed. Does that mean... Hope lit her face. It means Aiko is part of our family now, Kazuki said quietly. If that's okay with you. Rina's delighted squeal was answer enough. Epilogue. 6 months later. The spring festival at Sakura Elementary was in full swing. Aiko watched her students perform a traditional dance, her heart full. She'd returned to teaching full-time, though now she had security that made the principal nervous and pickups that involved expensive cars with tinted windows. Your kids are talented, Kazuki murmured beside her. He'd surprised her by coming. The fearsome Kurosawa Oyabun sitting on a tiny parent's chair, looking completely out of place and somehow perfectly content. They've worked hard. Aiko squeezed his hand. Thank you for being here. Where else would I be? Rina performed a solo piece on her flute, and Aiko felt Kazuki's pride radiating beside her. The girl had blossomed over the past months, confident, happy, secure in the love surrounding her. After the performance, other parents approached cautiously. Kazuki's reputation preceded him, but they'd seen him at events, watched him interact gently with Rina, noticed how he treated Aiko with obvious devotion. Fear was gradually being replaced by curious respect. Your niece is talented, one mother said nervously. She is, Kazuki agreed. Aiko's been an excellent influence. They chatted briefly, stilted but friendly, before the woman retreated. Aiko smiled up at Kazuki. You're getting better at parent small talk. Don't push it. I'm here for you and Rina, not socialization. But his tone was amused. They walked home together as evening fell, Rina skipping ahead, chattering about her friends and the festival. Kazuki's hand was warm in Aiko's, solid and safe. I'm going to ask you something tonight, he said quietly. Ask me what? You'll see. His smile was mysterious. Be prepared to say yes. Later, after Rina was in bed and they stood in the garden beneath cherry blossoms, Kazuki pulled out a small box. Aiko's breath caught. I know this is fast, he said. I know my world is complicated, but I also know that I want to spend every day for the rest of my life protecting you, loving you, being the man you see when you look at me. He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring. Aiko Mizuki, will you marry me? Tears streamed down her face. Yes, yes, of course yes. The ring slid onto her finger perfectly. Kazuki kissed her deeply, and Aiko thought about how far they'd come. From a bullet and blood to this moment of perfect, peaceful love. I love you, she whispered against his lips. I love you, he answered. My brave, impossible, extraordinary woman. From a window above, Rena and Kaide watched with matching smiles. Finally, Rena said. They took forever. Kaide laughed softly. The best things always do, little one. The best things always do. Under the cherry blossoms, surrounded by the fortress garden of a Yakuza estate, a schoolteacher and a boss held each other close. Two people from impossible worlds who'd found in each other exactly what they'd been missing: protection, purpose, and a love strong enough to bridge any divide. The bullet that had brought them together had left a scar on Aiko's shoulder. But it had also left something far more important. Proof that courage comes in many forms, that love finds you in unexpected places, and that sometimes the most dangerous person in the world is exactly the one who'll keep you safest. And in the morning, they'd wake up together, face whatever challenges came, and protect the family they'd built from courage, choice, and the kind of love that transforms everything it touches.